Okay, so what we're going to be covering here is how to use SVN. We're using Tortoise SVN for this class. The principles are going to be similar for other ones, but the exact way things work may be different. So this is my folder dedicated to Game 475, which is the first Game Studio. It's Game Studio 1 is 475. In this case, Game Studio 1 is my folder for AC Transit Drive stuff. So right here is my SVN folder. And what this is this contains a copy of all of the stuff, all of the everything that's on the SVN repository. And I've got it downloaded here, and the green check means it's up to date. So once you have Tortoise SVN installed, if you click anywhere, it doesn't matter what it is, you can go down here, open the repo browser, and oh, that's the wrong one. I'm just going to go here. If you do it through a folder that that is linked to a certain SVN repository, so in this case this one, it'll automatically take you to that address in the repository. So in this case it takes me here to the Game Studio 1 main SVN repository. The link for this is in the version control folder on the Google Drive if you need to get here. As well as the link for resetting your password. But what this is this is a representation of the directory structure, or this is basically what this is what the server has on it, and you can do stuff with this through the repo browser. You can drag and drop, and so like let's say I go to text. Sure, I can take this and I can drag it out here, and it just downloads it and copies it. And that's what it is. And you can do things like delete stuff, or rename it. There's some stuff you can do here, but in general, don't mess around with stuff on the repository through here, because it creates a different commit every single time you do that, which then fills up the log and makes a mess, and it's inefficient. So basically, to work out of SVN, what you want to do is you want to go to the trunk and you want to download whatever you're going to be working with. In my case, I basically work with all of this, so I have the entire SVN repository downloaded. There's nothing in trunk and tags right now, or branches and tags right now. Don't worry about branches, don't worry about tags. Tags are for sorting things, excuse me, and branches are to work on two different versions of the same thing, and we're not going to get into that. That's a mess, or it very quickly becomes a mess. So anyway, to download a particular folder, what you do is you would go to it. So if you wanted trunk, then you'd right click here and do checkout, and that will, well, let's just do that. I already have it downloaded, but so I'm not going to do trunk again, and it's like 12 gigs or something. Actually, it's more than that. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, there's a lot there. So this is the URL of the repository. This is the folder in the repository you'll be pulling from. Down here is the checkout directory, and this is where on your computer you will be saving it to. So if I go here, in this case I have mine there, but if I were to make a new folder, we'll just call it test, and I select that, that's where the repository is going to be saved. Fully recursive. Some of this stuff I don't entirely understand, but basically all the default stuff is what you want. Okay, so I'll go over this really quickly. Revision. Head revision is the current revision of the latest update of the SVN repository, and you can do a specific revision, which is useful if you're trying to roll back changes. And so if you click on the show log, and you guys probably can't see that because someone on the monitor, there you go. Then what we have is a whole list of, well, this is just 100 of them. You can change it up here. Oops. But anyway, so if I wanted to say download like this one, I could click on this, press OK. It automatically puts in 8.14. Then I'll grab the state of the repository at that commit. So I'm going to go back, and I'm just going to grab, how big is this one? 53 megabytes. That's fine. Okay. Okay. And then you get a log telling you what's going on, and the first time you download an SVN repository, it's probably going to take a while because it has to download everything. One of the nice things about SVN is that if you're using big file, or not big files, if you're using a lot of little files for a project, so especially something like textures, say, if you have 1,000 textures and they're 2 megabytes a piece, well, that's 2 gigs. But if you're only ever changing 2 or 3 files at a time, then that's only 4 or 6 megabytes worth of changes. So anytime you grab a repository or reset it, it's going to be a big download, but after that it's going to be short uploads and short downloads. And so it lists added means it was in this case, since it's the download, it means it was added to your computer, but there'll be things like added, removed. You can get errors and stuff, but anyway, those are always fun. So I'm going to refresh this. So now we have this test folder here, which has a nice little green check mark, and if we go in here and then we go to there, you'll notice that these are basically identical, and this here is the local copy of the files on my computer, and then this in the repo browser is the repositories version. And so now that I have all this, I can do things like Photoshop. I can make changes to files or add new ones into this working folder on my computer, and that doesn't make any changes to the repository until you do a commit. But you have everything. Now this can create issues if you are working on something and then somebody else starts working on it, and whoever commits first will screw up the other person. So it's very important to be very clear with other people who is working on what, because otherwise you either lose a ton of work or you have to spend time trying to get it, to merge the changes. And anyway, with code it's pretty easy because you can just insert text or remove text, but with things like models and textures and stuff, it doesn't work that way. So that's why it's really important to not work on other people's stuff. Okay, desktop. Alright, so now I have my test picture here, and if I put this in here, it now shows up here, and notice it does not have a little tiny green check mark next to it. It doesn't have, it's just the airframe view thumbnail, and it's also not in here. So now that I have, let's also, well, we can do that afterwards. So I've got this in here now, and I made my change. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to do a commit. And we're going to check that because we want to add this as part of the commit. And then we're going to comment, because commenting is really important because it lets people know what you were doing. Especially important if something gets screwed up. And we hit OK. And then we get our log again. It says adding because this is a new file. And it adds it to the repository, and then it uploads it. And again, if you're moving big stuff, this can take a while, especially since upload speeds are generally slower, and the download speed from the school to you should be decent, but outside of the school itself, outside of the school network, it's painfully slow. You get like 512 kilobytes a second. And now we have our nice little green checkbox next to test. So now, if I want to open this up with Photoshop, and make a change, save it. And I'll leave that up. Now it's red. Red means it's not synced with the server. It means there's something different about this file than the one on the server. So now we can do our, and you can commit a single item just by right-clicking on doing it. Hit OK. Modified. So that means it was registered with the repository, and then you're adding a change. So, and now it's green again. And now if we go here, refresh. There we go. Now it shows up on the repository. So the whole commit and update. So update is what you do basically whenever you start working, unless you have something that you're worried about a conflict with. You want to do an update whenever you get on to wherever you're working. And if you're working at school and at home, then you need to update whenever you get on at home and whenever you get on at school. And then you do a commit whenever you're done working on something. And don't just do this at the end of the day after having done a bunch of stuff, because if you have like a conflict, you have to sort that out, and it's harder to tell what files are associated with what things. So it's okay to do a small bunch of stuff, upload like 2 or 3 textures or something, but if you're working on like a really complex thing, then please commit everything at once for that project, or for that subsection. And so if I want to get rid of this because I don't care about it, now it's gone, and now I can do a commit here. And then it says deleting, and the thing's deleted. And if I go back here and refresh, it's gone. What else? Oh, okay. So let's just copy this. So I just made a copy of this. If I need to just upload something really quickly, and it's on a single file, you can just drag it in. And then it'll give you a commit message, and it does its little log thing, and it's added. Actually, doesn't even show the log. Anyway, it doesn't matter. All right. Yeah, and so that was an update, and there's no changes. My version on my computer is synced with the repository on the server, so there's no changes to make there. Let's see. The repository structure. So we have our trunk. Actually, I'm going to delete this really fast. And you can just delete SVN folders and they're gone. They don't leave behind trash, because the important stuff is in this hidden folder in the SVN, the main checkout folder. So this contains all the important stuff, and if you delete that, then SVN no longer keeps track of it. Anyway, repository structure. So we have an art folder, we have an audio folder, we have a build folder, game design, schedule, user interface. Keep your stuff in the things that are relevant. So if you're working on user interface, keep it in user interface, and don't screw around in other people's folders. Don't go in game design or whatever unless you're asked to. For art, so for this, it may be different for other projects, but for this particular project, we have this, which is my test file, my Unity test file, so that I can have all of my stuff set up and easily test things anywhere. And we have a characters folder, which contains our, well, in this case, vehicles and the passengers. We have a concepts folder, which means that all the concepts are in one place and you don't have to fish around everywhere. These could be put in the folder with the things that they are that are. If you have like a car folder, the cars concepts could be in a the character folder with the cars, it doesn't really matter, but anyway, in this case it's just simpler to clump everything together. There's an effects folder, which basically is particles and things relating to that. Environment is large construction pieces, so roads, buildings for us, and that's basically it. And then props is all the little crap that decorates the world, so power poles, stoplights, bus stops, etc. Everything has its own folder, or ideally everything does. Some of the stuff doesn't because people were lazy at the time, me in this case, or it doesn't have a lot of things associated with it. But there's a bunch of trees in here, and then there's some sub stuff, and I don't care whether or not you upload all of your working files, but I do need a Maya file somewhere, or 3ds Max or Blender, or whatever you worked in, and I definitely want the FBXs correctly named, and the textures also correctly named in the main folder with it, so I can easily get those. And if you have a whole bunch of other stuff, those can go in a subfolder, or you cannot upload them. It doesn't really matter as long as I do have at least one Maya file with the thing, in case somebody needs to go back and edit it, because editing triangulated FBX is a pain in the ass. Yeah. Again, make sure you comment every time you do a commit. And actually, let's look at the log really fast. So if you go to the log, you can see here, this is the commit number, this is who did it, this is what they did. So in this case, something was deleted, something was added. If we go down here, delete, something was deleted, something was added, and something was modified. So you have commit number, what was done, who did it, the date, and then you have their messages. So if you go down to here, added white, yeah, I don't remember what that was about. Oh, I do know what that was. I made the, but anyway, so this gives a brief overview of everything that was done. So like here, I added the 512 version of the app icon. And then you have some stuff like this, where a whole bunch of stuff was added, and there's no comment. And I can roughly tell what was done because I can see that all these things are gas stations. But it would be better if I didn't have to click there. And again, this would be better if I had commented it, but I didn't. So that is a brief overview of SVN. Hopefully nobody gets confused. I guess one thing I will go over quickly is if you have a conflict, and I'm not going to make one because it's difficult to do with just one browser, and it's a pain in the ass to deal with. But so if you do have conflicts, so revert here will allow you to roll back. Well, there's no changes, but actually here I can do this. So that's now changed, and I've got that red because something's different in there. I can then go and revert, and this rolls it back to the current version on the server, although it didn't delete that. So if you download the repository and you make a bunch of changes to it that you don't want to keep, and you don't want to, and that you don't want them to be committed, you can use revert to just reset your repository to the base, or reset your copy of the repository to the latest commit, or I guess your commit, since you could be at any commit point. But anyway, it resets to your commit, your files to that commit. If you get conflicts, it's a mess to deal with. Sometimes you can do cleanup, and that will do it. Sometimes you have to manually go in and remove the offending files, and then update, and then do a manual merge. That will always work, but it's definitely a pain in the ass. This is why it's really important to know who's working on what and not work on other people's stuff and not have other people work on your stuff, which in our case means that for Trello, well, I don't want to go to that right now, but anyway, on Trello, things are tagged with somebody's username when they pick up that thing, and then everybody else just doesn't touch it. I think that should cover it for now.